"Oh God, mother-in-law, did you really dare to walk into your own husband's funeral in that cheap dress? You look like something that was just pulled out of a trash bin." Vanessa Monroe's voice cut through the solemn air of the church like a cold blade, ripping apart the sacred quiet. Every gaze instantly fixed on me. The holy silence dissolved, giving way to whispers. Vanessa didn't stop. She kept humiliating me. "You look no different from a beggar who's wandered into a place she doesn't belong." If Jonathan Hartman were still alive, he'd be so ashamed he wouldn't dare lift his head to anyone. Daniel Hartman, my son, tried to intervene. "Vanessa, that's enough. This is Dad's funeral." But his voice trembled, weak, completely powerless. Lauren Pierce and Olivia Grant, Vanessa's two close friends, immediately chimed in, nodding along with mocking smiles. One of them muttered loud enough for the whole pew to hear, "This really is a disgrace to the family." Snide laughter and cruel words spread like a filthy chorus in the most sacred of places. I remained silent, my hands clenched until the veins stood out. The hand-embroidered black silk dress worth $62,000 was being degraded to something from the trash. But I didn't cry out of shame. I cried because a fire of fury was rising, because of the bitter truth that the one humiliating me was someone I had once opened my arms to and called daughter. Vanessa took a few more steps, leaned close to my face, and pressed each word as if performing a solo on her own stage. "This woman has no class whatsoever, and the whole family has to bear the shame because of her." Derisive chuckles burst from several corners. I bowed my head and let the tears run, but in my heart a cold vow was carved deep. "Jonathan Hartman, you once told me, never let anyone trample you. Today, right before your coffin, I promise Vanessa will pay the price. And when she thinks she's won, that will be the moment I make her kneel." Clara, my daughter, finally couldn't endure it any longer. She sprang to her feet, her voice steely, slicing through the whispers. "Enough, Vanessa. This is not a place for you to stage a performance humiliating someone else." The entire church froze. I lightly placed my hand on Clara's shoulder to signal her to stop, then spoke, deliberately revealing a weaker stance. "Let them talk, dear. I can bear it." Vanessa burst into triumphant laughter. "At least you know your place. If you have no taste, accept it. Don't drag the whole family down into the mud with you." Lauren clapped obnoxiously, her shrill voice chiming in. "Exactly, Vanessa. You're an angel, daring to speak for everyone." Olivia hissed through her teeth with faux compassion. "How pitiful. If you've lived your whole life in deprivation, what would you know about elegance?" The room erupted at once, vicious whispers rising like a flock of vultures fighting to pick at a carcass. "How shameful. What a disgrace." Vanessa hadn't finished her act. She pointed straight at the black pumps I was wearing, her voice dripping with contempt. "And those shoes, they look like something scavenged from a flea market. If it were me, I'd die before stepping outside in that trash." A few people even nodded, praising Vanessa's candor. But I knew the truth. Those shoes were a bespoke pair worth $15,000, a number Vanessa would never touch. She bent closer, lowered her voice, but loud enough for all to hear. "Mother-in-law, I know you're poor, but next time there's a significant occasion, just tell me. I'll lend you a few pieces from my closet. I have connections at the best boutiques in the city. At least you won't make the whole family ashamed like today." Mocking laughter exploded, turning the funeral air into a clown's stage. People marveled at Vanessa's counterfeit charity, unaware that she was merely a second-tier sales associate in the very chain of boutiques that I, the one being humiliated, own. I drew a long breath, swallowed my fury, and answered in a trembling voice, "Thank you, but I don't want to trouble anyone." Vanessa smirked, her tone syrupy. "It's no trouble. That's called charity. People with class should know how to help the ordinary." Lauren jumped in, wearing a counterfeit look of pity. "Vanessa truly is an angel. Not everyone is that generous." Ordinary, the word rang in my head. They had no idea that the ordinary they scorned was in fact 18 boutiques, 4 textile factories, and assets worth over $100 million in my hands. Vanessa tossed her hair, turned like a self-appointed MC, and proclaimed before the entire church. Today we learn something. Class isn't about age or status. It comes from how you invest in yourself. Never accept rustic tackiness. Scattered applause rose, burning my cheeks. Then Vanessa delivered the final thrust, her voice grinding through her teeth as if to drive the knife deeper. Poor Jonathan Hartman. He worried his wife couldn't survive without him, and it turns out his instincts were right without him. She's nothing but pathetic. My chest tightened, but I didn't collapse. In my mind, Jonathan's voice resounded. Don't let anyone trample you, Evelyn. When I'm gone, you must be the one to stand up. I lifted my eyes, looked directly at my husband's coffin, and vowed, everything will change, starting today. The coffin was carried to the cemetery, the burial completed, and the funeral drew to a close. People left one by one. Clara walked beside the relatives while I strolled slowly toward the parking lot, letting their pitying gazes trail my back. Everyone believed I was a destitute widow, living off my husband's pension, and I let them believe it. My 2013 Toyota Camry was parked at the corner of the lot, old, unassuming, just enough to nourish the image of poverty. I opened the car door, deliberately not looking back. They had no idea that in another garage, a few blocks away, Rolls-Royces, a Lexus LS, and a Maserati lay quietly beneath their covers. But today, I only needed the Camry. This disguise was the perfect armor to conceal my true nature. When I returned to the small apartment everyone thought was a makeshift place, I took off the black pumps Vanessa had called trash. I set them neatly into a wooden box, then poured myself a glass of wine. Not the cheap kind from a supermarket, but a vintage Bordeaux, over $5,000 a bottle. I sipped slowly, letting the bitterness and tannins spread across my throat, a reminder that the whole world was laughing in my face, and I allowed them to laugh. The phone vibrated. Clara. Her voice shook with anger. Mom, I'm sorry. I couldn't stop Vanessa. She went too far. She has no shred of humanity left. I sighed, deliberately keeping my voice tired. Don't worry about it, Clara. I'm used to it. Let it pass. We can't let it pass. Right at Dad's funeral. It's humiliating. I'm going to talk to Daniel. He can't let his wife treat you like this. I smiled faintly, hiding it behind a frail facade. Do nothing, dear. I don't want to break their marriage. But inside, I knew. The storm had already risen. Vanessa had no idea that the moment she pointed a finger in my face before Jonathan's portrait, the game had begun. Tomorrow, the boutique angel won't be standing behind a counter with that sanctimonious smile. Tomorrow, she will begin to learn the real lesson. Kindness is not weakness, and arrogance must pay its price. That night, when the city had sunk into silence, I stepped into a room no one in the family had ever known about. Hidden behind the familiar wooden bookshelf, a secret door swung open, revealing our true world, mine and my husband's. Soft light fell over a room packed tight with filing cabinets, safes, contracts, and blueprints, the heart of the entire empire. Jonathan Hartman and I had built over 42 years. Here, every number, every report, every smallest trace of personnel was preserved. I pulled open the third drawer and took out the folder labeled Vanessa Monroe. When the cover flipped back, cold, stark words appeared, repeatedly warned for tardiness. 4 customer complaints for condescending attitude. Internal supervision report. Tends to discriminate between rich and poor. Serves customers based on appearance. Each line confirmed what I had experienced. Vanessa had not only humiliated me at the funeral, she had degraded the very brand of my family in the midst of the empire Jonathan and I had built. I sat down in the chair and picked up the black company phone, the line known only to senior personnel. A familiar female voice came through, trembling slightly as she recognized me. Mrs. Hartman, Please accept my deepest condolences about Mr. Jonathan Hartman. Thank you, Heather, but I'm not calling for comfort. I need something urgent. Her voice straightened at once. Your instructions, please. I want the entire report from the last 6 months on one employee, Vanessa Monroe. Position, Tier 2 Sales Associate, Flagship Store. List every recorded violation. Do not omit a single detail. Heather hesitated. Any special notations? Of course. State clearly. Disrespectful attitude toward customers, violation of service principles. I do not tolerate this kind of personnel in the system. I understand. I'll prepare the disciplinary memo immediately. Not yet. Have it ready. We'll wait for the right moment to bring down the curtain. I hung up. The room returned to silence, punctuated only by the ticking clock. I leaned back and closed my eyes, and I could hear Jonathan's voice echoing from afar. You're too gentle, Evelyn. It's time to show them your kindness is not weakness. I opened my eyes and stared at the file in front of me. Vanessa thought she had won, thought she stood atop the peak of a petty power. But starting tomorrow, I would turn that very arrogance into the sentence that buried her career. Just one day after the funeral, Vanessa had turned the humiliation she created into a tool for showboating. On social media, a photo spread. She posted the black dress from that day with a hypocritical caption, "When you lend your mother-in-law clothes, that's called charity." The comments below roared, "Angel of the boutique. A model daughter-in-law, everyone needs one like her. Truly knows how to live." I looked at the phone screen, the corner of my mouth curling into a cold smile. Those cheap praises were nothing more than the knife Vanessa was driving into her own reputation. She thought she was winning, unaware that every step she took had already entered my sights. In the executive office, Margaret Maggie Lawson, my right hand for 30 years, walked in and set a coffee tray on the desk. "Report, ma'am. How are the flagship store's sales?" I asked. "Stable. The new collection is selling well. But..." Maggie hesitated. "Speak." "Vanessa again. Customers have complained she judges wealth by appearance and serves at whim. The cameras also recorded her using her personal phone on duty, leaving customers waiting, and..." Maggie lowered her voice. "She's been taking photos with merchandise she hasn't bought and posting it online as if it were hers." Each word Maggie spoke was like a cold nail hammered straight into the coffin of Vanessa's career. I took a sip of tea, my voice low. How interesting. My daughter-in-law not only humiliated me, but also insulted the Coleman brand. Maggie nodded. "This Saturday, there's a meeting of the entire management team at the flagship. If you wish, that would be the moment." I let a thin, icy smile show. "Exactly. Time for a personnel purge. Lay out all the prepared materials, Maggie. I want everything on the table, and I want the name Vanessa Monroe right in the center." A faint shiver crossed her face, though her eyes gleamed. She knew well, once I had decided, there was no turning back. While Vanessa was still busy flaunting her fake virtue online, I had already turned that very pretense into evidence to finish her. And this Saturday, the stage curtain Vanessa had erected would be torn to shreds right in the middle of the empire she still fancied herself an irreplaceable piece of. I was sitting back to relax when the phone vibrated. Daniel Hartman. My son's voice dropped, full of hesitation. "Mom, Vanessa said she'll help you upgrade your wardrobe. She said since Dad passed, things must be hard for you. If you need money, just tell me." I gripped the phone tighter, keeping my tone even. "My son, I can live well enough on your father's pension. I don't need anything more." Daniel was silent for a moment, then went on. "Vanessa said your apartment is bare, your clothes are old. She really cares about you. And Vanessa is about to be promoted to store manager. When her salary goes up, we'll take better care of you and take you shopping properly." Each word bored into me. My son truly believed those lies. My blood simmered as I listened, but my voice stayed steady. "Daniel, do you believe everything Vanessa says? She's my wife. Why would she lie?" I bit down hard, keeping the bitter laugh from escaping. The moment the call ended, I dialed Margaret Maggie Lawson. Check the rumor about Vanessa's promotion for me. A few minutes later, Maggie reported back, her voice firm. There's no such thing. Rachel Sutton, the direct supervisor, is actually recommending probationary discipline for her attitude toward customers. Perfect, I replied. Prepare one more thing. Review all of Vanessa and Daniel's finances. Income, spending, debt. I want every number clearly laid out. Maggie didn't ask why. 30 years on the job, she understood. If I'd given an order, there was a reason. The next afternoon, a thick report lay on my desk. I turned each page. Mortgage payment on the condo, $4,500 per month, exceeding Vanessa's salary. Credit card debt, over $50. Auto loan, $26,000. New home mortgage paperwork totaling $270,000, based entirely on the upcoming promotion. I closed the file and leaned back in my chair. The picture came into sharp focus. Vanessa hadn't only fabricated stories to show off, she had also dragged Daniel straight into a massive pit of debt. She had turned my son into a tool to paint an illusory life, then used those very lies as leverage for her dream of power. And now, I had everything I needed to flip the board. This Saturday, not only would Vanessa's career be stripped bare, but the lies she had stuffed into Daniel's head would collapse as well. Saturday. I chose a simple black Gucci set, a white gold necklace glinting beneath the collar. Not flashy, but enough for anyone with a trained eye to recognize its worth. I wanted to walk into Vanessa's territory as an ordinary widow and let her destroy herself with her own mouth. At 9 a.m, I arrived at the central boutique, the flagship-store, the heart of the entire system. Rachel Sutton, a senior manager, came out to greet me, a professional smile and a respectful gaze. "Hello, Mrs. Hartman. The director is waiting for you upstairs." I nodded lightly and strolled through the lobby. Staff were focused on serving customers, every gesture by the book, except for one person, Vanessa. She was leaning against the counter, phone pressed to her ear, smudged red lipstick, rumpled uniform. A middle-aged customer stood waiting beside her, clearly annoyed, but Vanessa didn't bother to glance over. The customer shook her head and moved to another counter. Vanessa still smirked, unaware she'd just lost a sale right before her eyes. I stepped closer and cleared my throat softly. "Excuse me." Vanessa turned, startled for a beat, then instantly switched to a syrupy tone. "Oh, Mom, what are you doing here? Daniel didn't say you were coming." I pressed my lips together, feigning uncertainty. I came to buy a few things. Daniel gave me a little money and told you to help me choose. But I'm afraid it won't be enough." Vanessa's eyes lit up. This was the moment she'd been waiting for, the chance to school her provincial mother-in-law. "Fine, but how much are you planning to spend? This place isn't cheap, you know, not like those spots where you grab clearance junk." I lowered my head and answered quietly, $600. Vanessa burst into laughter, the sharp sound ringing across the counter. "600? God, that'll only buy a tablecloth here, not clothes. But fine, I'll do a good deed and rescue your style. If you go around dressed the way you do, you humiliate the whole family." She pulled me to the accessories counter and picked up a discounted silk scarf. "Look, only $300. Put this on and at least you'll look less like a beggar. This is elegance, not the rags you usually throw on." I nodded, pretending admiration. "It's lovely." Vanessa thumped her chest, eyes glittering with triumph. "See? My eye is flawless. Someone like you could live a whole lifetime and never know what luxury really is. That's why the boss is definitely going to promote me. No one here has taste like I do." Right then, Rachel stepped up. "Vanessa, Mrs. Hartman is waiting for you upstairs. Urgent." Vanessa jerked, her face blanching. "The boss is waiting for me? Upstairs? Mrs. Hartman is really here?" "Yes, and she's not pleased," Rachel replied, eyes narrowing. Vanessa glanced at me, then stammered, "Mom, I have to go up right away. I'll come back to help you after." I gave her a gentle smile, my voice soft. "Go ahead, Vanessa. Work is important." I stood and watched her hurry up the stairs, unaware that each step was carrying her toward the end of her career and that the truth was about to be laid bare before the entire system. When Vanessa disappeared up the stairs, I strolled unhurriedly around the store. I wanted to see with my own eyes how the system operated when the true owner stood right in the middle and no one knew. The other staff were professional, bowing to customers, explaining each product in detail. I stopped at a counter where a young woman, Emily Chen, was arranging silk scarves. "How did you find the service of the curly-haired girl just now?" I asked quietly. Emily flinched for a moment, then chose her words. "If you mean Vanessa, I shouldn't criticize, but by our training, service means respecting every customer, no matter how they're dressed. That is true elegance." I smiled and nodded. "Exactly. Respect is the foundation of class." A little later, Vanessa returned, face flushed, breath uneven. Clearly, the meeting upstairs hadn't gone well. She put on a sugary tone. "Mother-in-law, has no one helped you yet? That's terrible. Let me take care of you." I pointed toward Emily. "This young woman has done very well." Jealousy flashed in Vanessa's eyes. Her voice dropped, cold. "She's new. What does she know about service? Around here, I'm the only expert." Emily lowered her head and moved to another counter, but the contempt still visible in her eyes was unmistakable. I turned to Vanessa and asked softly, "The meeting upstairs, what did the boss say to you?" Vanessa gave a thin smile, her voice smooth. "Probably to tell me about my promotion. It's routine." A lie slipped out as lightly as a breath. I suggested, baiting her. "While we wait, why don't you show me a few outfits?" Vanessa's eyes lit up. She seized the chance to show off. "Of course. Once I become manager, I'll change a lot of things, especially the dress code for customers. We can't let people dressed so ordinarily drag down the store's image." I tilted my head, a half smile on my lips. "An interesting idea, but are you sure wealth always equals class?" "Obviously," Vanessa shot back at once. "The rich should display at luxury cars, designer bags, dazzling dresses, and people like you," she raked her eyes from head to toe, "will forever be clearance customers." I stayed silent. Her words laid bare a stark, naked shallowness. Right then, Margaret Maggie Lawson walked into the store. She came straight toward me, her voice carrying clearly. "Ma'am, everyone is waiting for you upstairs." Vanessa frowned and snapped, "Who are you? Don't interfere." Maggie smiled calmly, then looked at me, waiting for a signal. I gave a slight nod. "Perhaps you don't know," Maggie said slowly, her tone ringing like steel. "Your mother-in-law is Mrs. Evelyn Hartman, the founder and owner of this entire boutique system." The room froze. Every staff member went silent. Nearby customers gaped. Vanessa turned to stone, her face drained of color, lips trembling. "No, impossible." I looked straight into her eyes, my gaze ice cold. "Believe it or not, Vanessa, that is the truth. And from this moment, your performance is over, you're fired." That afternoon, I called Daniel to the apartment. He walked in with a tense face, confusion still clouding his eyes. "Mom," he began, voice shaking. "Vanessa cried all morning. She says she was fired unfairly, that you were involved. Tell me, what's really going on?" I motioned for my son to sit, my voice lowered, steady and firm. "Daniel, what you're about to hear will change everything." He collapsed into a chair, fists clenched, his eyes a mix of anticipation and fear. Vanessa also said, "You're actually the owner of the boutiques? That can't be. I can't believe it. All my life I thought you lived on Dad's pension." I stood, walked to the old bookcase, and pressed lightly on a hidden catch. A soft click sounded. A door swung open, revealing a room no one in the family had ever seen. "Come with me." Daniel stepped inside, his eyes widening in astonishment. In front of him were gleaming safes, stacks of stamped contracts, photos of boutiques across the city lining the walls, and piles of bank account files stacked on the desk. He choked. "My God, what is all this?" "The family's true assets," I answered, my voice carrying evenly in the closed room. 18 high-end boutiques, 4 textile factories, and hundreds of millions in the bank. The empire your father and I built over 42 years. Daniel staggered, clutching his head as if he couldn't believe it. "Mom, then why did you live as if you were poor?" I looked straight into my son's eyes. "Because I wanted you children to grow up on real values, to avoid being ruined by money, to keep you from choosing partners for appearances alone." Vanessa proved me right to hide it all. Daniel dropped into a chair, his trembling hand digging into his thigh. Tears rolled down as his voice broke. "My God, I let my own wife humiliate you at Dad's funeral. The woman who built an entire empire, reduced to a beggar before everyone." I placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder, my gaze cold yet sad. "Now you understand why I cannot allow Vanessa to remain in this family. This isn't revenge, Daniel. It's honor. It's the dignity of our entire household." He bowed his head, shoulders shaking. And I knew the veil Vanessa had woven around my son had just been torn apart, exposing a raw, painful truth. I set a thick folder down on the table. "Daniel, this is everything Vanessa has done over the past 2 years. Multiple warnings for tardiness. 4 times customers filed complaints about her attitude, and the internal supervision reports show clearly. She serves people based on how they dress. This is the truth, not rumor." Daniel's hands trembled as he opened each page. Every line, every red stamp, cut into his trust like a blade. His brow furrowed, the defensive spark in his eyes dimmed. Maybe there's some misunderstanding," he stammered. "Vanessa, she says otherwise. She says customers often misinterpret." I gave a cold smile, my voice unwavering. "Misunderstanding? Then what about what happened at the funeral? You saw with your own eyes Vanessa pointing at my dress, humiliating me in front of hundreds. Is that also a misunderstanding?" Daniel fell silent, his face lowered. I knew his heart was cracking apart piece by piece. But I didn't stop. I pulled out another folder, thicker and heavier, and dropped it onto the table. "This is the financial file. Do you know anything about this?" Vanessa fabricated a story about being about to be promoted to file for a home loan, credit card debt, all of it based on a lie. Daniel clutched his head, unable to look, his voice breaking in despair. "No, my God. So all this time, my wife has been living in deceit, and I believed everything." I looked at my son with both pity and sorrow. This wasn't only my humiliation at the funeral. This was a larger question. To what extent can the dignity of a family be destroyed by a cheap woman? "Daniel," I said, my voice dropping like a verdict. "This is not just about dresses or a store. This is about dignity. And now you must answer. Which side will you choose? Dignity or deceit?" The room sank into silence. The wall clock ticked in dry, hollow beats, like a countdown to the moment Daniel would face the most important choice of his life. I didn't let Daniel sit in silence forever. I slid the financial folder toward him, my tone decisive. "I'll make it clearer. Credit card statements. Over $50,000. Condo mortgage. $4,500 a month, far beyond the income. Car loan, $26,000. Paperwork for a new home mortgage, $270,000. Daniel, this isn't a small matter anymore. This is the deep hole Vanessa has dragged you into. Are you sure your office job with its meager salary can carry this forever? And the biggest question, where has all that borrowed money gone?" He looked up, eyes red, voice trembling. "But she's still my wife. I swear, I never thought Vanessa could do this." I cut in. "And I am the one who bore you, raised you, and sacrificed my life for you. Daniel, I'm not forcing you to pick a side. But I must warn you, every choice has a price. If you choose Vanessa, you accept a life with a woman who finds pleasure in luxury goods, endless partying just to posture on social media, and above all, someone willing to trample others to elevate herself, including your own mother. Daniel stood and walked to the window. His shadow stretched long across the tiles, shaking like a man who'd lost his bearings. His voice came in broken threads. My whole world is collapsing. Everything I believed is a lie, from my marriage to my future. I stepped behind him, my voice steady. No, Daniel, the real world has never collapsed. What's collapsing is the false world Vanessa built. Now you have a chance to rebuild from the ground up, but only if you choose the truth. Daniel turned back, his eyes burning through the storm of despair. Mom, will you help me? I can't do this alone. I set my hand on his shoulder, my gaze frank and uncompromising. I will help, but only if you prove yourself worthy. First, you must decide, are you a man who lives on lies, or a man who stands up for the family's dignity? Tears spilled over. He choked. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I let you be humiliated at the funeral. I promise from today on, I will be different. I nodded slowly. That is only the first step. The truth is out, Daniel. Now it's your turn to choose the path you will walk. 3 days later, the phone rang early in the morning. I picked up. Clara's voice trembled on the other end. Mom, Daniel called me at midnight. He was crying, saying everything I've believed all this time is a lie. Mom, is it true? Are you the owner of this whole boutique empire? Vanessa got fired. The debts are piling up. Is all of this real? I sighed, poured more coffee, my tone steady. Yes, dear. Come home. It's time you knew everything, too. Over an hour later, Clara sat in the living room, eyes wide in disbelief. In front of her were thick folders, ownership contracts for 18 boutiques, documents for textile mills, and bank balances that would overwhelm anyone. My God, Mom, how could you keep all of this from us all this time? Her voice caught, almost reproachful. I looked straight into my daughter's eyes, calm. Not because I didn't trust you. I wanted you to grow up on real work and genuine kindness. I didn't want money to turn you into someone arrogant, someone who chooses a partner only for a polished exterior. Clara bit her lip, eyes brimming. She whispered, but if I'd known, our lives might have been different. I could have gone to a private university, had more opportunities. I tilted my head and smiled faintly, gentle but firm. Perhaps, but are you sure you'd still be the Clara you are today? A nurse devoted to everyone, a woman who cherishes simplicity, a heart not clouded by money? Are you sure you'd have stayed yourself? Clara fell quiet, then slowly nodded. Tears fell, but a slight smile touched her lips. I'm not sure, but maybe you're right. She gripped my hand, voice shaking yet resolute. And Daniel? He married the wrong woman, someone who not only disdains you, but disdains our entire family. I nodded, my voice heavy. That is the proof of a wrong choice made inside an illusion. Daniel chose Vanessa when he thought our family was merely ordinary, when he sought status on the outside instead of values within. All Vanessa needed was a glossy coat to blind him. Clara rested her head on my shoulder and murmured, Mom, now I understand. True wealth isn't money, it's dignity. And dignity is not something you can fake. In the quiet room, I saw both my children, one newly disillusioned, one newly awakened, entering the most important lesson of their lives. Money can buy dresses, houses, and acclaim, but it will never buy respect. While Clara and I were still talking, the phone rang. Margaret Maggie Lawson's voice came through even and professional, with a thread of urgency. Mrs. Hartman, Vanessa Monroe has shown up in the headquarters lobby and is making a scene. She says she won't leave until she sees you. Clara glanced at me, eyes flashing. Mom, let me come with you. I want to see with my own eyes what my sister-in-law says when there's nothing left to hide behind. 30 minutes later, we stepped into the tower. The marble floor gleamed. A high glass ceiling scattered brilliant light. Clara was awestruck, whispering, "My God, this is the empire you quietly built? It's magnificent." I only smiled lightly. 42 years of work, dear. This isn't boasting. It's your father's and my sweat, tears, and dignity crystallized. Maggie led us to a conference room. Vanessa sat there. Her appearance was pitiful to the point of ruin. Wrinkled blouse, smeared lipstick, dark circles under her eyes. Seeing me, she sprang up, speaking quickly, voice syrupy like someone adrift in a storm. "Mrs. Hartman, please, give me one more chance. I know I was wrong. I'll retrain, do anything. I beg you, for Daniel's sake." I took a seat and motioned for her to sit. Clara stood beside me, arms folded, eyes like ice. "Vanessa," I said slowly, each word measured. "From beginning to end, you've only spoken of money and Daniel. But not once have you offered a true apology for humiliating me. Not just as your mother-in-law, but as a widow grieving her husband at his funeral. You shamed me, Vanessa, in front of hundreds." Vanessa burst into tears, streaks running down her cheeks. I regret it, but if Daniel finds out everything, he'll leave me. I can't lose him." Clara couldn't hold back and cut in. "And you think humiliating a 74-year-old widow at her husband's funeral counts as helping? You still dare call yourself human?" Vanessa choked, stammering, but no words came. I looked at her not with hatred, only a hollow quiet. "The last chance I'm giving you isn't a job, and it isn't money. It's a chance to keep a shred of character. Go home, sit down in front of Daniel, and confess everything, no lies, no excuses. If you can do that, at least you'll still have a sliver of dignity." Vanessa sobbed, trembling as she whispered, "So, you've destroyed me completely." I rose, met her eyes, my voice low and hard as steel. "No, Vanessa, you destroyed yourself. I'm simply refusing to be a victim one more time." The air in the room thickened. Vanessa collapsed back into the chair, shoulders shaking, while Clara stood beside me, her gaze burning with anger and contempt. I knew this plea would not save Vanessa. It was only the epilogue to a play she herself had directed, and she was the one who pulled the curtain down. Vanessa left the conference room, leaving behind a heavy silence. The clatter of her unsteady heels echoed across the marble, then faded at the end of the corridor. Clara watched her go, eyes still simmering, then turned to me, her voice low but steely. "Mom, she isn't remorseful. Those tears were only for what she lost, not for what she did. Someone like Vanessa never really changes." I nodded slowly, my gaze drifting to the window. True, people can change behavior when they're afraid, but character doesn't pivot because of a single shock. Vanessa grieves the loss of her advantages, not the loss of her dignity. That afternoon, my phone rang. Daniel's voice was hoarse, trembling. "Mom," Vanessa just confessed. About work, the debts, the money she blew on parties and designer goods, and about what she truly thinks of you. I've asked for a divorce." I closed my eyes, my heart cinched. It hurt because my son's marriage had just shattered. But I also felt relief, because at last, the truth stood in the open. "How do you feel?" I asked, my voice gentler. Daniel choked, each word breaking free. "Devastated, but also, like a weight has been lifted. I've lived in a fabricated illusion too long. Now, I can see clearly." I answered, my voice low and firm. "Pain is the price when truth rises, but that empty space will make room for a new strength. Daniel, this isn't an ending. It's your chance to grow." The next day, both Daniel and Clara sat in my living room. Before them, nothing was hidden anymore. Everything lay bare: assets, the past, the truth. Daniel bowed his head, tears running. "Mom, I'm sorry. Not only for staying silent at the funeral, but for years of failing to truly value you." I let Vanessa pull me away. Clara took her brother's hand, her voice full. I'm sorry too, Mom. I once resented you for hiding our wealth. But now I understand you taught us something more precious than money: dignity. I looked at my two children, one who had just lost a marriage, one who had just shed an illusion, both more mature in this moment. I spoke slowly, as if to etch the words in stone. You don't need to apologize. You acted on what you knew. But now the truth is clear. And the most important thing is how we go on from here. Daniel lifted his face, eyes lit with a mix of despair and hope. Mom, what must I do to prove I'm worthy of Dad and your legacy? I stood, opened the file cabinet, and took out a thick bundle stamped in red, the legacy plan your father and I had prepared years ago. The thud it made on the table left both Daniel and Clara stunned. I looked straight at Daniel. My voice rang out, strict yet resolute. You want to prove you're worthy of this family's legacy? Then you'll earn it. You will inherit the boutique system along with the 4 textile factories, but not by sitting in a director's chair right away. You will start at the lowest position, sales associate. You will stand behind the counter, greet customers, listen, and learn to respect every person who walks through that door. Whether they wear a suit or a threadbare t-shirt, you will respect them the same. Daniel went silent. He swallowed hard, his throat tight, then whispered, Mom, I accept. I need this chance to become the man Dad wanted me to be. I swear, I'll do it right. I nodded, my eyes still stern. I turned to Clara and spoke slowly. And you, my daughter, you'll inherit the real estate and the investments. But on one condition. You must use a substantial portion to establish a charitable fund focused on healthcare for underprivileged children and the poor. Money is not for waste. It must lift, heal, and open doors. Clara burst into tears, nodding fiercely, her hands clenched as if making a vow. Mom, that's my dream. I promise I'll make it real. I closed the file, my voice sounding like an oath. And there is one condition for both of you: never use money to demean anyone. If I ever discover that, all inheritance will be revoked, without debate. Daniel and Clara looked at each other, then answered in unison, voices firm. We understand. In that moment, I saw a change in both their eyes. The pain from the funeral, the humiliation from Vanessa, had all become a lesson carved deep into their marrow. And I believed, somewhere, Jonathan was smiling. 5 months later, Margaret Maggie Lawson stepped into my office with a rare smile on her lips. Ma'am, you have a special visitor today. I looked up. The door opened, and Daniel appeared, not the arrogant young man who once walked beside Vanessa, but a different figure now. He wore the boutique's simple black staff uniform, his face beaded with sweat after a long shift. Yet in his eyes I saw something new: conviction, humility, and a quiet strength. He bowed his head, half joking, half earnest. Good afternoon, Director. Do you have a moment for an ordinary sales associate? I smiled softly, my voice easing. Always, Daniel. How is the new job? Daniel sighed, not a complaint, but the breath of truth. Harder than I imagined. I stand for hours, listen to every customer. Some try on a dozen outfits and leave with nothing. Some come only to nitpick and sneer, and I still have to keep a smile. At first I felt a little humiliated, but then I realized this is the real work. He sat and spoke more slowly. Yesterday, a woman in her 50s came in. She was dressed simply, her shoes worn at the heel. My old instincts wanted to steer her to the clearance section. But then I remembered your words. Every customer matters the same. So I took her through the store, introduced each piece carefully. In the end, she bought only a $200 scarf. But before leaving, she held my hand and said, "It's been a long time since I've been treated with such respect in a store." I listened, my heart warming. How did that make you feel? I asked. Daniel's voice tightened, his eyes brimming. For the first time in my life, I understood the lesson you and Dad always taught. Not about money, but about respect. I regret letting Vanessa blind me. But now, I believe I can rebuild from the right foundation. I placed my hand over my son's, my voice low and steady. Daniel, your father would be proud, and I am, too. In that moment, I recognized the most vivid lesson. Daniel the son, once clouded by vanity, had finally begun learning how to become a true man. 4 months later, late one afternoon, my phone rang. The voice on the other end was trembling, hoarse from crying so familiar it made me pause. Mrs. Hartman, I know you don't want to hear me, but I had to call to say thank you. I frowned, surprised. Thank me? Vanessa broke down, her words tangled with sobs. Thank you for the lesson you taught me. I'm working at a small supermarket now. The pay is meager, the debts are still there. But I've learned one thing. Respect never rests on what's in your wallet. I stayed quiet and let her go on, every word soaked in tears. I used to think elegance was luxury cars, designer bags, expensive dresses, and nights out. I believed power meant looking down on those beneath me. But after losing everything, I see it now. True grace lies in how you treat people, especially those who can do nothing for you. I asked, my tone cool and unhurried. So what have you learned for yourself, Vanessa? A ragged sob came first, then her voice raw but clear. That I was wrong to turn Mr. Jonathan Hartman's funeral into a spectacle of shame. Wrong to scorn poorer customers, wrong to use Daniel's money as a prop for showing off. Now, all I have left is regret. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know, I truly understand. I exhaled. The anger was gone, replaced by a quiet I couldn't name. Vanessa, forgiveness isn't what you need from me. What you need is to forgive yourself and to prove it through actions, not tears. There was a brief silence. Then she whispered, husky but resolute, I promise, I will live differently. Even if no one believes me, I'll try. I closed my eyes and heard Jonathan's old whisper, Evelyn, when people mistake kindness for weakness, show them the difference. Now I understood. The sweetest vengeance wasn't destroying Vanessa, it was turning the humiliation she sowed into a lesson she could never forget. Since the day Vanessa disappeared from our lives, the atmosphere at home slowly returned to its natural orbit. No more vicious arguments, no more contemptuous looks whenever I walked in. The house, once steep in the scent of pretense, was warm again. There were scars, yes, but the darkness had lifted. Daniel kept working at the flagship boutique. Still the simple black uniform, still standing at the counter every day. But now he bowed to each customer with a sincere gaze. I saw him learn to listen, to be patient, to be humble. The son who had once let vanity lead him now matured through wounds of his own making. And I knew, somewhere, Jonathan must be proud. Clara also set her charity project in motion. On the day she handed over the first gifts and funds to underprivileged children with serious illnesses, her eyes shone with pure joy and the tenderness of a nurse. Not fame, not money, but the happiness of knowing she had just changed an entire future. As for me, one quiet afternoon I sat in my office at headquarters. Dusk stretched along the window, dyeing the space crimson. I lifted a glass of Bordeaux, letting the shimmering taste brush against memory. I whispered softly, as if speaking into the air, Jonathan, my love, I finally did it. I protected myself, kept my dignity, just as you told me to. And the children, they'll be all right. In that moment, I felt my heart grow light. The revenge had ended, but more importantly, justice had been done, not through hatred, but through education and human values. Vanessa lost her job, fell on hard times, and had to relearn the lesson of dignity. Daniel woke up from his illusions, rose from the wreckage to become a true man. Clara sowed seeds of love for children who were not as fortunate. And I, Evelyn Hartman, kept the promise I made to my late husband, not to let anyone trample my dignity, and not to let the next generation stray from the path of decency. I closed my eyes and smiled. This story ends not only with revenge, but with a legacy of self-respect, of love, and of human dignity. Sometimes, justice doesn't come from a courtroom, but from each person's own choices. If you have ever faced a moment of being belittled or trampled, remember, dignity cannot be taken unless you choose to surrender it. This story is not only about Evelyn, Daniel, or Vanessa. It is a mirror for each of us to look into ourselves. Money and fame can be lost, but dignity and kindness are the true legacy we leave to the next generation. So what do you think? If it were you, would you forgive Vanessa now that she has realized her mistakes, or let her bear the full consequences of what she caused? Leave a comment below and share your perspective. Your viewpoint will make this story even deeper. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss dramatic, heart-wrenching stories that end in justice. Your support helps this channel continue bringing more meaningful stories. Goodbye, and see you next time.